Okay, okay. It has started. Just as a first step, I wanted to call this A and B discuss.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, I think even of opening a YouTube channel on this.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, this would be really good because I've noticed that our situations are kind of completely different than each other, so it makes for like a really good conversation to kind of get to our different perspectives. It makes yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that we're both crazy enough, that we can, go into various subjects, history and stuff, because uh, there's a lot of things. I don't want to get bogged too much into day-to-day politics, but
No, we don't need to do that.
but we gotta mention it though.
Oh yeah, of course. I do have an interesting lead-in story though. You'll get an enjoyment out of this one.
Okay.
So my have you heard this name before? I think it's Stimach, Stimach, or Stimek, or something like that. I think it's a Croatian or Czech name or Polish, maybe.
Yeah. Honestly, that could be any Slavic name.
Okay, so my coworker's family apparently we had a discussion about this just yesterday. Apparently, he says he was from Croatia.
Okay.
So, of course, you and I, that kind of means like, okay, well, now we got to figure out what time period do you think you're from
Oh my
Croatia?
God. That's don't go there.
Well, let's
you
just
know.
say I won't go too deep, but the thing I kind of figured out was that his family had to have left before World War II, which okay, that's helpful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It reminds me of that joke on the Argentinian beautiful blonde gal, and the
Oh,
question, when did your grandfather emigrate to Argentina?
yeah. So it got a little better though, because I'm sitting here talking about him, and he said, "Yeah, my grandfather was always so mad because the Russians like locked him into a some sort of cesspool or what are they the pit that you bury all your waste in? I forgot what they call it. It's a
Oh,
cesspool."
yeah, yeah.
And I said, "Wait, the Russians did this?" And you said you're from Croatia. Okay, I don't think you're from Croatia. And then I kind of figured out, okay, I bet you guys are really from southern Poland and you guys probably got rolled up in the whole Russian Polish war of like early 1920, 21, because that makes a lot of sense, the story that you described to me.
Well, yeah. If he emigrated prior to World War II, it does make sense. Although, truth be told, the Polish won that war. So
Oh, I know they did,
yeah.
but
So
but they did occupy part of Poland, and I could see where okay, the Russians might have kind of
you sure?
rolled you up because you're part of the resistance, and then
Yeah.
when they left, you said, okay, I'm out of here, and you moved to Croatia, and then you moved to the United States from there. Okay, I could kind of see that. But yeah, I didn't go too deep. I didn't really bore him with any specific details that we've talked about at length because there's no point to that.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
other
Of
one that was
course.
related was kind of funny. This is like right before we started talking. I ran into someone else whose family name was Pavlovich.
Yeah. That's.
And I talked to him a little bit about that, and of course he had no clue what I was talking about. It's like, yeah,
Oh, whoa, whoa,
okay,
whoa,
let's
whoa, whoa,
just
whoa, 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 wait. Or is that Pavlovich or is that Pavelich? Because
oh
there's a big difference.
yeah. I had assumed it was Pavlovich, but
Yeah. Well, Pavlovich is fine. Everybody has a Pavlovich.
oh, that's a very common name.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
If it's
well, I didn't elaborate too far, but I said, yeah, I bet you guys left before World War II because you might not have survived World War II if you didn't leave.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Nasty stuff.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
yeah, as
All
we
right.
discussed on the other channel. What
Ooh,
can you
that
do?
was. I think that was our opening day, wasn't it? Or at least one of the first two episodes. And honestly enough, that was really my introduction to this whole Yugoslavia thing because the first book I read that wasn't an English book, which, as we've all discussed, English books are of some value, but not a ton. This is the
Oh,
first one.
you mean British books? British, as in
British. I'm
British
sorry.
author. Yeah.
Yes, yes, British books, not English books. British books are like Not
Yeah.
sure you're talking about the same war, but okay, fine. Carry on with yourself. So the first one I read that was not a British book was about the opening days of the 41 stuff. And it's like, what is going on here? And after a while, I realized, oh, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
a different book.
Yeah. Bad stuff that's been, well, mostly hidden under the rug
Oh,
for a very long time. Not given any kind of
yeah.
how should I say it, spotlight or anything. But
No.
I mean, particularly in the Western literature and everything.
Oh, the West doesn't even know what happened for the most part. At least that's as far as I can tell. Nobody really knows anything about it at all. And I'm assuming that in your neck of the woods, it's a hotly contested item, and that's fine. I get it. It's not good history. So yeah, there's gonna
Yeah.
be a lot of arguments about it.
Yeah, exactly. It is contested. Unfortunately, there's a lot of propaganda around it, but honestly,
Yeah.
it did happen, and it left some consequences, and will probably be leaving consequences far, far into the future.
Oh, absolutely. Anyway, enough of that. So should we start with? We should start how you want to start because you're kind of like the big point here on this one, the Ukrainian issue.
Well, I mean, we can do Ukraine, we can do the US, we can do Serbia, because
Well, we can
also,
do them all. I'm kind of curious what the Serbian perspective is on this because I'm assuming actually they talk about it in your press. I would assume.
about the Ukraine stuff.
Yeah,
Uh
or not?
actually, mea culpa. I do try to avoid Serbian press and Serbian TV.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
that's funny. I do the same thing here.
yeah. It's very good for the health of the nervous system. Um, because I think that some people were too exposed to the Serbian TV of various kinds and various angles, and I think that's why there is a nasty
Funny.
situation here in
So
Serbia
that has
now.
the same effect in Serbian culture too, because we definitely have that here, where you can tell the people that like watch too much of this. I don't know, hair trigger news. I don't know what you want to call it. The news that's really kind of shouting at you and trying to get you to get all excited about stuff, and it's like, man,
Yeah,
I can only,
yeah.
only
We
do
have
this for so long, and then I just have to like go sit in the trees or something for a while.
Yeah, I definitely think we have that too. The
Eh,
problem is I think they got too much traction and too many. They got to work on too many people. But we'll discuss on it. You mentioned Serbia's view on Ukraine. At when the war didn't start in 22. It kind of
right.
started before. But when that phase in 22 started, pretty much everybody here was not very excited about it. Quite the
Right.
contrary.
Yeah.
It's two Slavic nations fighting, so there's nothing popular about it.
Well,
Uh,
so my question is now that it's we've actually starting to have like real conversation where people are meeting and talking about stuff, does that kind of change the perspective of it? Because now you actually have the Russians talking to people and they're trying to work deals out, whereas for the previous 2 years they didn't have any conversation at all.
Yeah, that's the other thing. That's the problem, but that's not. I wouldn't. Okay, this is not now connected to something that Serbia would
Right.
think in particular, but I think that the Russians used the word "nedogovorno sposobni."
Mm.
I think my Russian is terrible, but
Yeah.
anyways, the word roughly translated means not agreement capable.
Ah.
And when they say that word, they mean it. They mean it when they imply that the U.S. is not agreement capable.
Yeah.
So they cannot make any kind of an agreement with the U.S. and that will stick. So the last, they had the last option to start, to begin the operations, and they simply did it.
Hmm.
And of course, I mean, I very much doubt that the American public at large is very much aware of this.
Not really.
I do recommend if you can follow the Duran channel on
Ooh,
YouTube. Very much.
that
The
actually would be
Duran.
really. Is that Duran? I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I will check that out because that's actually probably really good.
Well, two Greek guys, Alexander and Alex. One is from Britain, one is from the U.S.
Okay.
They're fabulous analysts,
Okay.
and they bring up daily stuff and very interesting guys. Anyways,
Oh. Okay.
the point being is that simply put, the Russians perceived the U.S. and NATO as existential enemies,
Yeah.
and Ukraine as a battering ram, and they decided that they have to go, hot war instead of letting it simmer. And they had their requests beforehand from the American administration, which was then run by Biden. And that request mostly dealt with no NATO for Ukraine, and NATO needs to withdraw, either NATO or the US. Somebody needs to withdraw to 1997 borders.
So that would be what, from NATO's perspective or Russia-Ukraine perspective?
So from NATO's perspective, they need to go back from, I guess, Romania, Bulgaria, Baltic states, Poland, and back off from Russian borders.
So basically, you go to Germany, Czechoslovakia, maybe, and Austria, Italy.
I don't know about Czechoslovakia and Austria, to be honest. But basically, their request mostly dealt with getting NATO to back off, and obviously that request was not heeded. So there was a war, open war, and honestly, and it's quite clear. I mean, I don't know if it's clear to the American public or people in Europe, but I think that for outside observers, it's quite clear that Russia won against NATO. And
in this instance, yeah, I mean, you could argue they lost the 89-91 war, but that didn't really kick Russia out of Russia. That just kicked Russia out of Eastern Europe. That's it. So
yeah, exactly. So this was trying to roll NATO back, and in terms of the war, because of course this is not an open war of everybody in NATO against Russia, but it was the closest thing to it. So NATO armed the Ukrainians, and at that point, when Serbs saw that NATO was arming Ukrainians, our support for the Ukrainians was like, it's done, it's gone. Because obviously we have, how could I describe this in a polite way? What Serbs feel about NATO? It's very difficult to describe, using non-4-letter words. So
yeah, I could make this real simple for people that don't know anything about this at all. So I have a really good anecdote that seems to play out really well. Americans don't seem to remember anything. You're lucky if they remember anything from 4 years ago, but usually their memory goes back about 2 years, period. So pretty much a lot of parts of the world, and Balkans in particular, their memory goes back much further than 2 years. Like they go back hundreds of years. So for the Serbian perspective, the Americans seem to forget that we just bombed the crap out of Serbia about 30 years ago. And quite frankly, if I were Serbian, and you guys bombed my country 30 years ago, yeah, I'm not going to forget that. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life, pure and simple. So quite frankly, you go to like 30 years later, the Serbians are still mad at the Americans, and I could hardly blame them for that. I would still be mad at you. But Americans don't remember, I don't remember the Trump first presidency. So the Americans, it's like, what are you guys all mad about? Well, come, let me go bomb your country and see if you remember this 30 years later. And I bet they would, because, you're blowing stuff up, you're killing people, you're like, you've got permanent enemies now. So I would be stunned if the Serbians did like the Americans. That would really surprise me.
Yeah. But this is very I think this is correct. It might be a little bit odd, but I think it's correct. I think that Serbian animus is in particular connected to NATO. In particular,
Okay, so what is this about? Now, this I don't know.
because the bombing was done by NATO.
Bombing was done by NATO. Oh,
yeah,
you're right. Okay.
So if the hatred is calculated, NATO comes first, Americans come second. This
Okay.
because also for instance, from our perspective now that Trump is president, things are quite very much different. So I think this will I think this will also have a effect on Americans and Serbian relations, which is positive. Anyways,
actually, yeah, it's kind of funny. It'll likely improve now.
yeah. I think who knows? We might have good relations again at some point. You never know. Anyways, so the point being is that simply because Russia did, for all intents and purposes, did win, both on the battlefield and also because it didn't crumble economically.
True. Yeah.
Simply there was an option basically now in the last year for NATO countries either to attack Russia all in or concede defeat. If obviously, as you know very well, as everybody I guess should know, is if the NATO countries attack Russia, yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so basically the calculus is either Russia wins or nobody wins.
Yeah. So I guess in this case you could say Russia win because NATO didn't attack Russia, and I don't think they're going to.
Well, luckily for life on planet Earth, I don't think so either.
Yeah. Now the real question is, I'm sure they're still going to send them gear, but I think really what they're going to try and do is probably beef up all the countries that are bordering Ukraine and maybe not do much more than just send equipment to Ukraine. Because basically I don't think they're going to put troops in the country. I'd be surprised if they did not.
Well,
I mean, there may be detachments and stuff, but they're not going to send like a couple divisions to Ukraine. They're not going to do that.
I think that the Russian viewpoint is much bigger than Ukraine. So
okay.
I think that's this is understood in Washington, and I think particularly in the Pentagon, honestly, because Russia doesn't need any more, short-term agreements like the Minsk Accords. I guess nobody probably knows about them. Anyways, yeah, those were the agreements which the big chief in Washington made with the Indian nations, and broke them like a couple of months later. So yeah, so
as soon as they found something on their territory, oh look, gold, oh look, oil, oh look, coal.
Yeah, so I think that they're looking for something permanent, completely permanent vis-a-vis the West.
So do you think that would include, like, say, occupying Ukraine, and then we're not going to go any further, and you don't put any troops in Poland, or what? I don't know what sort of form that would take.
I don't know why Russians would come to Poland, honestly.
Well, I mean, okay, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Not that the Russians would go to Poland, that Russia would say, okay, we want a free hand of Ukraine, and you can't put any guys in Poland. NATO can't put anybody in Poland.
Hey, I don't know about Poland, honestly. I don't know how it works. Definitely for Ukraine, no kind of Western troops or influence probably is going to be acceptable.
Right, but then here we go with at least what they're reporting in our press is that the Ukrainians have agreed to give the United States access to 50% of their minerals. So
that is possible. That is probably not in that share, probably not 50%, but it's possible that the Americans will demand and that the Russians will accept, because it's an American-Russian deal now. that the Russians will accept to supply the U.S. with, the minerals or the things that the U.S. wants.
I got to tell you something about this particular thing. Now, from an American perspective, this is kind of weird because it's like, okay, well, what they report in our press and what the average person says, the Russians attacked Ukraine in 22, although they've actually attacked them sooner when they occupied Crimea. So now you're basically fast forward into 2025 where you're rewarding the Russians for attacking Ukraine. I mean, that's how it's sold here. Now, hard to say what the actual reality is, but in essence, getting a deal for 50% of the mineral is kind of like, it's actually good for both sides in a way, because the United States gets more resources and the Russians kind of get out of this war that they're in. Because, they're losing a lot of people right now, and their armies kind of got beat up in this whole fight. So they actually need time to pull back and regroup at this point.
Honestly, I think that the Russians are doing the war on the cheap, and they can go on like this forever. And the thing is that this war has...
True. They're in Ukraine right now, so it's like it's the Ukrainians' job to push the Russians out. The Ukrainians clearly don't have the force to do that, so the Russians just hang out until the Ukrainians kind of have their fill.
Well, actually, Russians are pushing the Ukrainians back.
Okay.
The
we're not
thing
really
is,
doing daily updates anymore here on the war because we got a whole bunch of other distractions now.
But... Yeah, the updates won't updates won't look nice. So I don't think the point is as follows. Simply, the West is not ready for war in terms of how Russia or probably even China are.
Yeah.
In terms of industrial might. And that's a huge problem for the whole West. I think that's one of the parts of the Trump agenda is to try to reinvigorate American manufacturing. Yeah, in terms of the current situation, this is just a question of, the Americans wanting a stop, a truce, while the Russians want a peace. So this is very much different.
So you think the Americans want a truce?
Oh, yes. That's the American interest. And European, of course.
Well,
Russian interest is...
Yeah, because at this point, the Europeans should get the message that, we need to kind of take this seriously. And even more so that the United States has kind of decided to close the deal without us. So it's like, we got to take this more seriously. Because, you don't really play around with the Russians. You pretty much have to protect yourself from the Russians. You don't really play with the Russians very much. Well, that's my perspective.
Yeah, that's the perspective, but I think that's a little I don't think it's accurate, because they the Russians played along for a very long time, and they decided that this is really not gonna work. So now that they got angry, and now it's basically existential for them. So they're not going to stop. And I think that wiser heads in Washington have realized this, while Europe is the equivalent of a headless chicken. They... Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, various people, various nations make mistakes, but honestly, Europe, it takes the cake. It's, compared to like India, China, Turkey, whatever, Europe is like, it's simply unbelievable, their level of, I don't know. I mean, it's like,
it's hard to say.
It's, for instance, I don't know if is Germany actively wanting to destroy its economy or I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what their game plan is. Or do they have a game plan, honestly?
I couldn't really tell you. I know they just had a shift in their politics. I don't know what that's going to bring as far as their economic future goes, but I'm assuming they've moved more right-wing at this point, a little bit.
No, I don't think so. I think that
they just have a big election like last couple of days.
Yeah, and the right the extreme right, which is not extreme. It's just a right-wing party. And actually, it's a division between the parties that want peace with Russia and the parties that are globalist parties. So the globalist parties still have the majority, but these parties that want peace with Russia are basically, they had a better result this time. The parties that want peace are divided among, right-wing and left-wing parties, so that's going to be difficult for them.
Right.
And on the other hand, so it's questionable whether they will be able to ever come into power. But for Germany, I don't understand their policy. Honestly, Germany and Serbia have, Germany has never done nice things to Serbia, so it's not that I'm not shedding tears or something like that. It's
not
just
sure the Germans have ever done anything nice for Serbia, have they?
We can talk. We can talk. I'll find something.
You'll find something. There had to have been some point, like, I don't know, mid 1800s, where they kind of supported Serbia against Austria, maybe.
No, I remembered. It was like the 1300s.
1300s.
Yeah, they sent a nice group of mercenaries. Yeah, they sent a nice group of mercenaries that were very helpful.
Is that the ones? What is that? The ones that they were under Turkish occupation then, so they were fighting the Turks somewhere, I guess.
No. They were fighting the Eastern Romans, the Bulgarians. I think the Hungarian. Anyways, but they were good. They were good, and they were appreciated. Okay.
So that was pre-Turkish invasion then, because I guess the Turks came in 1500s.
Yeah, it's like the Turks came in like.
Well, it had been after 1453, so
like 60 years later or something like that. 50 or 60 years later.
Yeah. Wow, what an impact they left too. That's a whole different discussion. You could write books about that.
Exactly.
Anyway, so back to the Ukrainian thing. So the Serbians like these potential deals? They don't really have an opinion about them yet.
Well, I think that people here would very much like any kind of a deal that will end the war. That's a given.
Okay.
These are bottom line. These are two Slavic nations that are fighting each other, so that's never good.
All right.
In terms of Serbian viewpoint, Serbia is the only country in Europe that has not sanctioned Russia.
Well, I'm assuming Hungary didn't sanction Russia either. I would assume.
Yeah, they did.
They did?
Yeah, the Serbia has the distinction, and I would say even honor, of not being the only country in Europe that didn't do it, that didn't cave into pressure.
Wow, I'm surprised that Hungarians caved into pressure, but okay.
Well, it was nasty pressure, It was a nasty pressure. So because if the Hungarians didn't do it, then that would break up the joint EU policy, and that would not be acceptable.
Right, because Hungary is part of the EU. Serbia is not part of the EU, right?
No. So that's I guess this would be one of the reasons why they launched the color revolution here in Serbia.
Oh.
Yeah, that's been going on for several months now. There were always demonstrations and things like that, with the intention of bringing in a more pro EU or pro Western kind of a crew.
Oh, interesting. But they didn't really win per se, I take it.
Well, technically they would need to win in elections. Yeah, okay. So that was obviously an obstacle. Now, what happened here is that there was an accident. Actually, I think 15 people were killed, and there was canopy on a train station fell, and the accusation was that it fell because of corruption.
Easy to believe.
Honestly, when you go into it, it's a catchy slogan, but if the canopy fell because it was constructed faultily, or it was not reconstructed, or something like that.
Right.
That's why things happen, because if it were because of corruption, you would assume that it kind of would work the other way. It's of course, it's possible to have accidents because of corruption, but in this case, I kind of doubt it. I mean, it's not that only I kind of doubt it. It's seemingly a fault of a technical fault. So
wow, you and I do the same thing. I've noticed. We just kind of analyze what's going on and then try and figure out what's really happening behind the scenes, the stuff they don't tell you about.
Well, yeah, nobody will tell you everything. That's
No.
one thing, and the other thing, it's very interesting to see. For me, I guess the terrible part is how easily people got riled up.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. The other terrible part is that it's kind of obvious. I mean, kind of obvious. It's seemingly the color revolution and everything looks, when you look at it from a broader perspective, it seems very organized.
Yeah.
Because it's synchronized with attack on president of Serbia, along with attack on president of Republic of Srpska in Bosnia. So it's suddenly you come up get slogans. Suddenly people get organized. Suddenly things just happen suddenly out of the blue. And so
man, I got some games I should show you. Actually, there's some designers that have kind of built this model, which is really pretty interesting. This model that you're talking about, this sudden organization. You make you make like a crew, make groups, and the groups actually give them some sort of power so they can actually do things, and it's interesting. Is your government parliamentary government, or is it something else?
It's a parliamentary government, yeah.
Oh, so you actually have to form coalitions of interest groups to make an effective government, then?
Yes.
And
yes,
the color crew weren't able to do that, yeah?
Well, no, because the ruling party has, overwhelming support in elections. It now has, it can even shed all of its coalition partners. I think can even retain a majority or close. So the ruling party is extremely strong. So because of that, obviously, trying to change the government through elections was obviously not the solution. So here they came up with an interesting model, and it's probably going to spring up somewhere else also.
Okay.
Because the spearhead of the colored revolution were college students.
Okay.
Which first of all blocked all college classes, everything.
Okay.
In public colleges, of course, not private.
Right.
And then started to blockade streets, to blockade traffic.
Right.
So, this is obviously, exercising force against other citizens.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that, because they interfered with traffic, there were a couple of accidents. So, and the interesting thing is that everybody decided that the government is to be at blame because of those accidents, and they criticize the government, although it's not the government that beat up the students,
the kids that were in the streets.
Yeah. So, anyways, and this was the situation was quite touch and go at that point. But the government came up with a very ingenious solution.
What's that?
They decided to bring in the police, not in order to disperse the demonstrations, but in order to protect the demonstrators against everybody else.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so you can imagine you have, your
That would be
your
confusing.
you have your street, you have your, street corners, and you have, your plazas and everything, and a bunch of demonstrators come in, cars can't go through, and instead of dispersing them, you protect the demonstrators in order to prevent anybody from coming in.
Wow, that sends a really curious message. So you can't really get mad at the government because they're saving the citizens, but you also can't really support what the students are doing because you kind of like your government.
Well,
Hmm.
everybody was in support of the students. That was a buzzword. I support the students. They're fabulous. They're our future.
Sure.
I was looking and rolling my eyes like,
Yeah.
the students had some demonstrative requests.
Sure.
They couldn't openly say that they wanted the head of the government, and the president.
Yeah, good luck with that.
And they couldn't openly say it, obviously, because then they would lose support. So
Yeah.
yes, it was quite clear for me, because they were saying that privately, and openly they can't say it, and it's quite clear at that point that somebody is, pushing them in various directions. So one of the reasons also why you want to protect the demonstrators is you don't want to have the repeat of the Kiev Maidan.
What's that?
At some points, some snipers started shooting at both the police and the demonstrators.
Oh, so that just kind of ratchets the temperature of the whole thing.
Exactly. A lot.
And a lot of things start going on, and pretty soon you don't know who's doing what, and you're basically trying to achieve something from all the chaos that erupts here.
Yeah. So, but that's one of the things that the government prevented. So basically, by protecting the demonstrators, the government said, okay, if there's any violence, that it's not coming from us. So, of course, now some political parties are trying to get violent from the parties from the opposition, but it's like nobody cares about them. They can get beat up and imprisoned. It's like, if somebody touches the students, then it's it's all out war. But if somebody beats up the opposition, nobody cares. Anyways. So that's the interesting thing. It's like everybody was gushing about the students, which I don't think is very rational, but it's what happened.
Yeah.
And the other very nasty thing is that the elementary schools and the high schools were involved, and the teachers made a strike, and that's a very underhanded move. Back to them.
Man, so next time we do this, I'll have to give you the American version of this, because it's the American perspective is kind of funny because they don't really protest much, and there's reasons for that. I won't get into it at the moment. But they are definitely starting to protest now, and it's like, okay, what has changed between, say, 6 months ago and now, where 6 months ago you wouldn't protest at all? Now I start seeing a lot of protest, and I can break that down for you a bit in our next session, because I think we've probably been at this about 40 minutes now, so we'll save that for the next time. But it's interesting because Americans don't usually protest, and now they actually kind of are. So it's like, okay, this is a different temperature now because people are actually doing some stuff. So it actually sounds similar to what you were just describing, which is kind of cool.
If I want to go full nasty, I'm going to say that the same people are organizing protests here and protests, But anyways,
they might be. I don't actually know. They could be. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But
they're actually, the USAID workers are using the same bloody hand that the protesters in Serbia are using. So, it's kind of obvious.
See what you did there.
Yeah. Anyways, what's but I want to tell you the very interesting part about the protests that comes back to our discussion on World War II. I guess that's the most interesting thing that the observation is, first of all, the protesters themselves can even be described as ethnically Yugoslavs.
Oh.
because
they're a mix then?
they're well, culturally, and sorry, not ethnically, but culturally. Sorry,
Okay.
Culturally, because the protesters are mostly located in inner cities.
Oh, really?
And this is particularly in Belgrade. And in Belgrade, there was a big outflow and influx of population when Tito brought in his people, his adherents, his followers into Belgrade to surround him, and keep him safe.
Right.
So when you look at the people that are protesting, they're basically, they're culturally Yugoslav, and they vote for the opposition, and the opposition is always, it's because of that it's unsuccessful at elections. But now, when you look at the students that are protesting, they have kicked out all EU flags. They have kicked out all Yugoslav flags.
Really?
They're not allowed there, basically.
Oh.
They are now, the students that are protesting are cosplaying as these nationalist Serbs.
Oh.
And what is interesting is that they even carry, Chetnik signs and Chetnik uniforms and Serbian flags and Serbian flags with Kosovo on it. And but
I would have not expected that.
Well, this to me is an obvious sign that somebody is running the show, because obviously if the students brought their own flags and what they actually thought, probably people would be probably not amused, or probably some people would be horrified, because these students are from inner cities, so they carry Yugoslav heritage with them. But instead they're pushing to the forefront the guys with the Serbian iconography, just in order to appeal to the broader populace.
That is a more attractive icon than throwing a EU flag or throwing a Yugoslavia flag. It's more attractive to appeal to Chetnik flags and Chetnik colors, and
they didn't go full Chetnik flags still.
Well, okay, yeah, but
who knows? Who knows? So then we have the situation that, okay, these people are being pushed to the forefront, of course.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that it shows that the organizers, who actually have the actual accurate information, know how much EU, Yugoslavia, and things like that are not popular.
Right.
So they're trying to do they're trying to blend in with the popular kids, and it's.
I wonder who's doing it.
Smart money goes on the British.
Again with the British?
Well, of course. I mean, I think the CIA is now, currently in
I don't think the CIA is going to have much to do for a little bit, so I think you can take them off the list of bandits for a couple of years.
Yeah, so it's possible that they're that they were one of the organizers, but I think that the British, my semi-educated guess is obviously the British, and probably the Croats are as subcontractors.
Yeah,
and the interesting thing, and the interesting thing also is that the thing with the USAID. Because USAID has been basically abolished, there's going to be a lot of people that are out of work.
Yeah. That's like a hotbed of recruits there then.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So you have a lot of people.
This will be fun to talk about. This is always trouble.
Yeah,
we're gonna have the same trouble here, because we just fired a whole thousands of people, and they're all going to wind up becoming the new resistance as well. So wow, it's funny these things are going on in both our countries at the same time, really.
Yeah. But the problem is that their problem is that they're not being paid. Okay, they gotta live from something. So this is the last ditch effort of the. But it's like the USA people are mostly those communist, culturally not communist, well, not necessarily, but Yugoslavs.
Right.
So the cultural Yugoslavs were the recruits for USAID mostly.
Okay.
So these are the same people that are protesting. So that's a very interesting dynamic there. So
Wow, it really
when
is, because now
yeah.
in some people's mind, you draw a direct connection between protests and USAID, which you're probably going to tell me, well, no, it took a long time to figure that out, Barry. But
Well,
most
I
of us
think
don't.
that
Most of us here don't really know what USAID even does, so we're kind of like innocent on that thing.
well, it does the only war where the US was actually victorious. Okay,
Ah,
you know, like coups, organizing coups and revolutions, and toppling leaders and stuff like that. Because
oh
you know,
boy.
I don't want to be I don't want to be too nasty. Okay, I'm a a pro-Russian evil Serb and things like that. So I don't want to denigrate you too much. But honestly, kind of your land forces and your navy, you know.
We're really good for mercantile stuff. We're not really good for like occupying territory. That's not really our thing.
Yeah, listen. If you want to do mercantile stuff, everybody's going to be happy to cooperate. But
Yeah.
yeah, and also that's yeah, we'll be going in the next episode on why I think it's necessary for Trump and the American government to get rid of USAID.
Ah, you know what?
For
We should stop right there because that's actually a
yeah,
really good thing. So we can talk about the United States flavor of these protests that we're talking about, because you talked about the Serbian ones. You can talk about the U.S. version of that. And actually, it would be good to wait a week because it's starting to coalesce. I've noticed it's really only sprung up in like the last 2 or 3 weeks, so it's kind of interesting to watch it morph and see if it's going to be something more consistent, or if it's just a flash in the pan. It's like, well, in a week it'll all be over. Nobody cares. And then
yeah,
that would
yeah.
be a nice segue for the USAID question as well. This is going to be fun too, actually. Compare and contrast revolutions or protests. There you go. There's no revolution yet. Hopefully there
Yay.
isn't, but we'll see. All right. Well, have a good evening, my friend. A pleasure as always, and let me know.